What if I told you that the problem student, the one labeled as rebellious, disinterested, the classroom's foretold failure is, in fact, the healthiest symptom of a sick system? What if that child, in their fury and apathy, is the most honest mirror of the hypocrisy that education refuses to face? Carl Jung's depth psychology teaches us something terrifying and liberating. What we most reject in the other is what we most fear in ourselves. The school, in its incessant search for the light of knowledge and good behavior, has created a gigantic shadow, a dark basement where it has locked away everything it considers unacceptable. Chaotic creativity, radical doubt, vulnerability, anger. And the problem student is the guardian of this shadow. He is not the sick one. He is the messenger of the disease hidden within the system itself. This journey we are about to embark on will reveal the hidden code behind human behavior in education. We will decipher why the greatest geniuses were often the worst students, and how the very structure of school may be, at this very moment, suppressing the potential of those it loves most. If you are ready to stop looking at the finger pointing out the flaw and start seeing the invisible matrix that created it, then your place is here. This is not just a video, it is a rite of passage. Subscribe to become part of a circle that seeks the truth behind appearances. Activate notifications, as each video is a portal that opens. And comment with the word awakening if you feel, deep in your soul, that you have been called to this conversation. Your interaction is the sign that we are not alone in this quest. Now, prepare yourself. The descent is about to begin. The architecture of our schools was inherited from an era that needed factory workers, not awakened souls. It was designed for assembly line efficiency, for the standardization of minds, for silent obedience. We sit in rows like products on a conveyor belt, passively receiving information, being measured and weighed by a ruler that only knows how to quantify what is superficial. The result of this social engineering is a crisis that does not appear in performance statistics, a silent crisis that reverberates within each of us, a deep thirst for meaning. Knowledge, when devoid of soul, becomes sterile information. It can fill the mind, but it leaves the heart empty. This feeling of emptiness, this apathy disguised as boredom in classrooms, is not a defect of the student. It is the natural reaction of a healthy psyche to an environment devoid of myth, ritual, and connection to mystery. We have been fed with facts, but we are starving for a lack of truth. Truth is not a piece of data to be memorized. It is an experience to be lived. Carl Jung understood that a human being does not fall ill from a lack of answers, but from a lack of questions worth asking. Modern education, in its positivistic arrogance, has tried to banish mystery, the symbolic, the numinous. In doing so, it did not create a more rational world. It created a desert, and the young souls who cross it feel a thirst they cannot name. The anxiety, depression, and lack of purpose that plague the new generations are the dark oases in this desert. They are the cry of the soul for living water, for a knowledge that not only informs, but transforms. The crisis in education is not pedagogical, it is spiritual. In the most Jungian sense of the term, it is a disconnection from the deep sources of being. To heal it, we do not need more technology or new methods, but an ancestral courage, the courage to return the soul to the act of learning, to transform the classroom from an information factory into a temple where the mystery of individuation can be, once again, celebrated. We need to stop asking what does the student need to know, and start asking who is the student destined to become. The difference between these two questions is the distance between emptiness and fulfillment. Imagine a gardener who treats all plants the same way. He offers the same amount of sun to a desert cactus and a rainforest fern. The result would be a disaster. Yet, this is precisely what standardized education does with the ecology of the human psyche. Jung offered us a botanical map of the soul, the psychological types, not to apply labels, but to understand the fundamental needs of each plant. The first major distinction, introversion and extroversion, defines where the soul draws its vital energy. The extrovert is like a solar plant, nourished by the light of interaction, the external world, debate. The introvert is a lunar plant, which performs its most potent photosynthesis in the quiet of its inner world, in reflection. The modern classroom is an open field under the midday sun, a paradise for extroverts. but a scorching and hostile environment for introverts. They are seen as shy or slow, when in fact they are simply processing the world in their native depth. Forcing them into constant participation is like pulling a root out of the ground to see if it's growing. But the map deepens with the four functions of consciousness, our tools for perceiving and interacting with reality. Sensation and intuition are our ways of perceiving. The sensing type is the master of the concrete. He learns with his hands, with experience, with what is tangible and real. Theory is a distant cloud for him. The intuitive, on the other hand, lives in the cloud of possibilities. He sees the patterns, the big picture, and is bored by factual details. An education that prioritizes the memorization of fact sensation over the exploration of concepts. Intuition is honoring only half of its students while leaving the other half hungry. After perceiving, we judge with thinking and feeling. The thinking type seeks impersonal logic, objective truth, structure. The feeling type seeks harmony, values, human impact. Our culture, and by extension our schools, idolizes thinking and disdains feeling, treating it as weak or irrational. With this, we create brilliant analysts who are emotional illiterates. A thinking student needs justice and coherence. A feeling student needs connection and validation. To ignore this is not just ineffective, it is cruel. The true educator is a translator, someone who can present the same lesson in the language of logic, the language of the heart, the language of facts, and the language of symbols. He understands that each student is a foreign country with its own language, and true learning only happens when we speak the native language of the soul. The classroom is not a neutral space. It is a pantheon, a stage where ancient and invisible gods act through young and unprepared bodies. These gods are the archetypes, the primordial structures of the collective unconscious that shape our dramas, our fears, and our aspiration. To ignore them is like driving in the dark, at the mercy of forces we do not understand. In every class, the archetype of the hero manifests. It is the student who needs a dragon to slay, a challenge to overcome. If the school does not offer him a meaningful journey, he will find his dragon in rebellion, in confrontation with authority. He is not bad, his heroic energy is simply misdirected. Beside him sits the trickster, the poor Eternus, the eternal child. He is the class joker, the one who breaks the rules, who exposes the ridiculousness of authority. The system sees him as a problem, but the trickster is essential. He is the agent of change, the one who prevents the rules from becoming too rigid, seriousness from becoming tyranny. To repress him is to kill creativity and the ability to adapt. And what about the archetype of the sage? It is that quiet student who seems older than his age, who asks questions that disarm the teacher. He does not seek grades, he seeks wisdom. An education focused on information leaves him malnourished. He needs dialogue, depth, philosophy. There's also the lover, who lives for connection, for relationships, and suffers immensely in competitive and cold environments. And the orphan, who feels abandoned by the system and desperately seeks a group to belong to, often finding it in gangs or marginal subcultures. The teacher is not immune either. Many are possessed by the archetype of the senex, the rigid old king, who fears the new and clings to old rules. Others embody the healer, who seeks to heal the student's wounds, running the risk of burning out. The ideal is the teacher as the magician, the alchemist, who knows the archetypal forces and consciously uses them for the transformation of both the students and himself. Recognizing these gods at play is the first step towards a conscious education. It means understanding that a student's behavior is not just a personal choice, but the manifestation of a powerful mythological force. Instead of punishing the trickster, we can give him a stage for his creativity. Instead of ignoring the hero, we can offer him real challenges. By doing this, education becomes what it always should have been, an initiation into the great dramas of life. The shadow is everything we are, but pretend not to be. It is the repository of our repressed instincts, our unacceptable emotions, our unlived potential. And the school, as an institution, has a vast and dark shadow. The collective shadow of education is made of everything it professes not to be: authoritarian, exclusive, frightening, a castrator of creativity. Since the institution cannot admit its own shadow, it needs a place to project it. And that place invariably, is the problem student. This child becomes the scapegoat for all the system's failings. His aggression mirrors the subtle violence of constant evaluation. His apathy reflects the lack of meaning in the curriculum. His laziness is a silent protest against work that does not feed the soul. To punish the student is an act of profound dishonesty. It is the system punishing its own reflection in the mirror. The work of integrating the shadow in the school environment is the most difficult and most necessary of all. It begins with a brutally honest question that every educator must ask themselves. What in the student irritates me so much that it is, in fact, something I cannot stand in myself? Perhaps the student's disorganization mirrors the teacher's internal chaos. Perhaps his arrogance is a reflection of the master's own insecurity. To bring the shadow to light means creating a culture where error is not a sin to be punished, but a sacred opportunity for learning. It means understanding that anger is just an energy that indicates a boundary has been crossed, and that it can be channeled into assertion rather than destruction. It means creating spaces to talk about fear, envy, sadness, the emotions we pretend do not exist in the aseptic environment of the school. A school that integrates its shadow is a school that becomes real. It stops selling the fantasy of a perfect world and prepares students for the complexity of real life, a place where light and darkness dance inseparably. It teaches that true strength does not come from the denial of weakness, but from its acceptance. By welcoming the problem student as a disguised master, the school has the chance to heal itself. It can learn from him about its own flaws, its own rigidity, its own need for control. Integrating the shadow is an alchemical process that transforms poison into medicine. It is what transmutes an institution of repression into a community of authentic growth. The ancient art of alchemy was not about turning lead into physical gold, but about the transmutation of the psyche, the soul's journey from the darkness of the prima materia to the light of the lapis philosophorum, the philosopher's stone. The classroom, seen through Jung's lens, is a vas hermeticum, a sealed alchemical vessel where this transformation can occur. The teacher is not a mere instructor. He is the alchemist. The students, with their ignorance, their fears, their raw genius, and their conflicts, are the prima materia, the chaotic and potential-filled raw material. The curriculum, the challenges, the projects, are the fire ignis that heats the vessel, that catalyzes the change. The first stage of the alchemical process is the nigredo, the blackening. It is the confrontation with the shadow, the dissolution of old certainties. In the classroom, it is the moment of chaos, confusion, of I don't know, of confronting difficulty. A teacher who fears the nigredo will try to provide all the answers, will avoid discomfort, and in doing so, will prevent the transformation from beginning. The alchemist teacher, on the contrary, holds the chaos, knowing that dissolution is necessary for something new to be born. He creates a safe space for doubt and error. Then comes the albedo, the whitening. It is purification, the extraction of the essence. It is when, from the chaos, the first insights emerge, the first clarity. The alchemist teacher here acts as a guide, helping the student to distill the learning from his experiences, to separate the essential from the superfluous. It is the phase of analysis, reflection, Socratic dialogue. Next is the citronitis, the yellowing, the sunrise. It is enlightenment, the new consciousness. It is the aha moment, the discovery when the student takes ownership of the knowledge and makes it his own. The teacher here steps back, becoming a witness to the dawn of the student's consciousness, celebrating his autonomy. Finally, the rubedo, the reddening, the realization. It is the union of opposites, the integration of the new knowledge with the student's total being. The learning is no longer something external, but part of who he is. He can now use this knowledge with passion and purpose in the world. The alchemist teacher knows that he is also inside the vessel. The impatience, frustration, joy, and pride he feels are part of the process. The student transforms him as much as he transforms the student. This vision rescues the sacredness of the teaching profession. It elevates the act of teaching from a technical task to a sacred art, a journey of mutual transformation in search of the gold of consciousness. The monomyth, or the hero's journey, mapped by Joseph Campbell, is the fundamental story of the human soul in its quest for growth and transformation. It is an archetype so powerful that it resonates within all of us. Education, in its deepest essence, should be the preparation and guidance for this journey. However, the current system often does the opposite. It teaches us to remain in the ordinary world, to avoid the call to adventure, and to fear the unknown. The ordinary world is the comfort zone, the knowledge we already possess. The call to adventure is the moment when a new challenge, a disquieting question, or a complex problem presents itself. Often, the school punishes this call, demanding that the students stick to the curriculum, not to deviate. The hero's first refusal is natural. It is the fear of the unknown. A good educator acts as the mentor, the sage archetype, who does not force the hero to cross the threshold, but gives him the tools, the confidence, and the map to do so. The tests, challenges, and allies appear in the inmost cave, the heart of the journey. It is here that the student faces his greatest difficulties, his internal demons, fear of failure, imposter syndrome, and external ones. Grades and traditional assessments are a poor representation of this phase. They measure only the result, not the process, the struggle, the resilience. The true assessment would be the student's ability to get up after a fall, to learn from error. The moment of the supreme ordeal is the major project, the final exam, the presentation. It is here that the hero, student, must use everything he has learned to face his greatest challenge. The reward is not the grade, but the insight, the new skill, the transformation of consciousness he achieves. It is the magic sort of knowledge he now possesses. The road back is the integration phase, connecting the new learning with what was already known, applying it to the real world. Often, school stops at the test and forgets this crucial phase. The resurrection is the final test, where the hero must prove he has truly changed. And the return with the elixir is when the student becomes able to use his knowledge to benefit his community. He has not learned just for himself, but to serve something greater. Structuring the educational process as a hero's journey restores its epic and meaningful character. It transforms students from passive recipients of information into protagonists of their own legend. And it teaches the most important lesson of all, that the goal of education is not to accumulate treasures of knowledge, but to become the hero of one's own life. The rational mind, which the school values so much, is just the small tip of an iceberg. Most of our psyche resides beneath the surface, in the vast ocean of the unconscious. And the native language of this realm is not logic, but the symbol. The symbol is the bridge between the known and the unknown, between consciousness and mystery. An education that ignores symbolic language is an education that speaks only to a small fraction of the being. Dreams are the nightly letters from the unconscious, revealing our conflicts, fears, and potentials. While it is not practical to analyze every student's dreams, a dreamlike attitude can be brought into the classroom. This means treating content not just as literal information, but as a field of symbolic resonances. A poem is not just a set of words, it is a dream the poet dreamed while awake. A mathematical equation, to an intuitive, can be a beautiful and elegant poem about the structure of the universe. History itself is a great collective dream, full of myths, heroes, and shadows. Teaching how to read symbols is giving students the key to their own inner world. Art, music, mythology, and literature are the quintessential symbolic disciplines, but they are often marginalized as less important. This is a tragic mistake. They are essential food for the soul, what teaches us about ambiguity, metaphor, and depth. A teacher can use archetypal images to explain complex concepts. Photosynthesis can be presented as the myth of Persephone, the union of the light from the sky with the darkness of the earth to generate life. A chemical reaction can be seen as a dance of union and separation, of love and conflict. A hieros gamos, sacred marriage of the elements. Working with mandalas, with storytelling, with theater, are ways of allowing the unconscious to express itself and actively participate in the learning process. When a student says, "I didn't like this story, but I don't know why," he is on the verge of an important symbolic discovery. The teacher's role is to ask, "What in this story touched you? What image stayed with you?" This validates the student's inner experience and teaches him to dialogue with his own depth. A symbolically rich education does not just transmit knowledge. It evokes wisdom. It creates individuals who not only know things, but are capable of finding, meaning in the things they know, and in an increasingly literal and superficial world. The ability to think symbolically is one of the most radical and necessary skills we can cultivate. The persona, in Greek theater, was the mask an actor wore to play a role. For Jung, the persona is our social mask, the face we present to the world to adapt and be accepted. It is a necessary tool for social life. The danger lies not in having a persona, but in identifying completely with it, in forgetting that there is a true face behind the mask. School is one of the main places where we learn to build and use our first major persona, that of the good student. This mask is shaped by the expectations of teachers, parents, and the system. The good student is obedient, quiet, gets good grades, does not question authority. To build this persona, a child often needs to repress vital parts of themselves. Their genuine curiosity, which could lead to inconvenient questions, is sacrificed for obedience. Their creativity, which could lead to out-of-the-box and hard-to-grade solutions, is exchanged for conformity. Their vulnerability and doubts are hidden under a facade of competence. The price of wearing this mask for too long is the loss of authenticity. The child forgets what their true face, their true interests, their true voice is like. They learn that love and acceptance are conditional on their performance, on the success of their persona. This creates adults who are extremely successful externally but feel a deep emptiness inside. They are strangers to themselves. The pressure to maintain the academic persona is an immense source of anxiety. The fear that the mask will fall, that the fraud will be discovered, is constant. This leads to exhaustion, burnout, and an unhealthy relationship with learning, which ceases to be a joyful exploration and becomes an anguished performance. The role of a conscious education is to help the student develop a flexible and healthy persona, but without ever losing contact with their self, their authentic center. This is done by creating an environment where vulnerability is allowed, where questions are valued more than answers, and where failure is seen as part of the path, not as a moral failing. It is the teacher who shows themselves to be human, who admits not knowing, who shares their own struggles, who sets the example. They show students that it is possible to be accepted and valued for who they are, and not just for the mask they wear. Freeing students from the tyranny of the good student persona is one of the greatest gifts education can offer. It is giving them permission to be whole, to bring their entire being to the learning process and to life. What is the ultimate purpose of human life? For Jung, it is not happiness, success, or perfection. It is individuation. Individuation is the process of becoming who you truly are, in your unique and incomparable totality. It is the journey of realizing the potential of the self, the archetype of wholeness that exists within each of us. It is the process of differentiating oneself from the collective psychology, from the expectations of society and parents, to find and follow your own path. Education, in its highest sense, should be the servant of this process. It should not be about molding the child into the image of society, but about providing the tools and the safe environment so that the seed of the self, which already exists within them, can germinate and grow in its own direction. Mass education, by its nature, works against individuation. It promotes conformity, comparison, and competition, all poisons to uniqueness. It teaches us to look outward for validation, grades, rankings, diplomas, instead of teaching us to listen to the inner call, the subtle voice of the self that guides us toward our unique purpose, our vocation. An education that supports individuation is radically different. It values introspection as much as extroversion. It encourages the exploration of multiple interests, even those that do not seem useful or productive, because it knows that the soul's path is often winding. It teaches students to dialogue with their inner world through journals, art, meditation. It helps students to recognize and integrate their shadow, as individuation requires the union of opposites, not one-sided perfection. The teacher's role in this model is that of a midwife of the soul. He cannot tell the student what his path is, but he can help him remove obstacles, to hear his own inner voice more clearly. He does this through questions, not answers. What fascinates you? What outrages you? What would you do if you were not afraid to fail? These are the questions that water the seed of the self. Individuation is not a selfish path. On the contrary, Jung stated that only a truly individuated individual can have a healthy and contributory relationship with the collective. Someone who knows themselves does not need to project their shadow onto others, does not need to blindly follow the crowd. They contribute to society from their uniqueness, offering the gift that only they can offer. Therefore, an education for individuation is the most powerful form of social activism. It is the bet that a better world will not be built by conformed masses, but by a constellation of conscious, courageous, and whole individuals. The crises we face in the world today, ecological, political, social, are not, at their root, technical problems. They are problems of consciousness. They are the macrocosmic result of millions of fragmented individual psyches, disconnected from their depth, their shadow, and their center. Lasting change will not come from new policies or technologies if they are not accompanied by an expansion of human consciousness, and the place where society's consciousness is sown, for better or for worse, is in the education of its children. Rescuing the soul in education is not, therefore, a philosophical luxury. It is a matter of survival and evolution, an education that continues to promote unbridled competition. The fragmentation of knowledge and the denial of the shadow is actively contributing to the insanity of the world. It is forming the future leaders and citizens who will perpetuate the same destructive patterns. On the other hand, an education inspired by Jung's depth psychology plants the seeds of a more conscious society. By teaching students to recognize and integrate their shadow, it forms individuals less prone to projecting evil onto others, to demonizing the enemy, and to engaging in destructive conflicts. By honoring all psychological types, it cultivates a society that values the diversity of talents and perspectives, where the introvert and the extrovert, the thinker and the feeler, can collaborate instead of compete. By using the hero's journey as a model, it inspires resilience, courage, and a sense of purpose that goes beyond personal gain. By reintroducing the language of symbols and myths, it reconnects the culture with its roots, with the sources of wisdom that have guided us for millennia. By placing individuation as its ultimate goal, it promotes individual responsibility and authenticity, creating citizens who act from an inner ethical center, and not out of fear of punishment or desire for reward. Changing education is the most powerful leverage we have to change the world. It is a slow, generational work. We will not see immediate results, but every teacher who dares to be an alchemist in their classroom, every school that decides to honor the soul of its students, every parent who cares more about their child's integrity than their grades, is planting a tree of consciousness whose fruit will feed future generations. We are not just educating children, we are dreaming a new world. We are giving the collective soul a chance to awaken.